0312. The sky over western Moscow is pitch black. No wind, no sound of vehicles, only a thick silence that makes even the slightest movement feel abnormal. Then suddenly that silence is torn apart. 8 large UAVs activate their electric engines. 12 small kamikaze UAVs engage their guidance systems. All disperse from 3 different directions like invisible needles stitching together the sky over the Russian capital. More than 40 kilometers away, the early warning radars on the outskirts of Moscow begin to flicker. 1, 2, then for weeks signals appear on the screens. Unstable, unidentified shape. Not large enough to classify as aircraft. Not fast enough to classify as missiles. Not clean enough to be birds. Those faint green dots flicker against the background of urban noise. Annoying but not alarming. At least not in the way the capital's air defense network had been trained to interpret. Moscow still believed in its perfect shield. S-400 on the outer ring, S-300 PM2 in the middle layer. Pantsir S-1 covering low altitudes. Low-frequency radars sweeping the sky back and forth like an invisible net draped over the entire city. It was a system designed to intercept cruise missiles, stealth aircraft, high-speed targets. What it was not designed to confront was exactly what was approaching tonight. A layered swarm of UAVs flying out of sync, each on its own path, each group with its own purpose. And the radar operators, accustomed to the rhythm of major warfare, had no idea that those small signals were carrying something capable of shattering their entire confidence. The intent was not hard to guess from the outside, but from Moscow, it was completely invisible. Ukraine was not striking the front lines, not hitting air defense positions, not touching strongholds near the border. They chose what was most valuable, most sensitive, and ironically, most vulnerable. Military airfields deep inside the capital where 20 strategic transport aircraft, early warning, reconnaissance, and tanker planes were parked. The assets that formed the lifeblood of the Russian Air Force in any prolonged campaign. And tonight, that lifeblood was about to be choked off. 3 UAV groups divided into 3 roles prepared weeks in advance. The northern group climbing high, exposing themselves clearly, emitting electronic jamming like neon lights, deliberately drawing the attention of every radar in the area. The western group flying low to the ground, hugging every contour of the terrain, slipping under power lines, skimming over industrial warehouse roofs, toggling sensors in rhythm with digital maps analyzed down to the last pixel. The southern group, absolute silence, no emissions, no responses, relying only on inertia, infrared cameras, and autonomous algorithms to glide through the night like ghosts. In Moscow's Air Defense Control Center, the atmosphere remained calm. The radar operator glanced at the faint signals and shrugged. Not missiles, not aircraft. Probably small reconnaissance UAVs, the kind they'd seen for months. Not a threat worth putting the entire city on red alert. The order came quickly. Monitor. Do not engage. Watch a short sentence and the one that caused the entire capital air defense network to miss the only 5 golden minutes to stop what was about to happen. By 0317, the number of signals increased to rapidly. Secondary radars began to saturate. Control screens displayed warnings of target classification loss. The control room shifted from calm to an uneasy silence. No one knew exactly how many objects were in the dark sky ahead. They only knew the number was rising. And in the moment, Moscow began to realize something was wrong. The UAV swarm had already breached the first barrier and officially begun its journey into the heart of the Russian capital. 322. The 9-N6E radar of the S-400 completes another rotation, scanning deep into the sky over western Moscow. This time, the returning signals are clearer but more meaningless. Small dots, speeds to low, reflections to weak. The target classification algorithm immediately filters out 1/3 of the signals, deeming them mere background noise or irrelevant objects. Only 5 targets remain on the tracking list. 5 faint green specks like breaths lost in the electromagnetic chaos of the sleeping city. 323. The northern UAV group begins climbing. 600 meters, 700 meters, 800 meters. They deliberately expose themselves, emitting heat and RF jamming like neon lights hanging in the black sky, forcing the S-400 radars to prioritize locking onto them first. From the perspective of any air defense officer, these are the real threat. And exactly as the controllers expected, for 8 NE-6DM missiles leave their launchers, streaking upward at speeds that seem to tear the night in half. But just as the boosters accelerate, the decoy UAV swarm dives straight down, dropping from 800 meters to 100 meters in seconds, blending into the electromagnetic clutter below. The missile seekers encounter the jamming zone created by power lines, steel mills, corrugated roofs, and street lights. Reflected waves bounce back from every direction. The missiles lock falsely, then try to reacquire, but the data is too overwhelming, too dirty. The processors choke. 3 seconds later, the self-destruct systems activate. 2 small bright flashes appear in the sky, then vanish into the darkness as if they had never existed. Meanwhile, the Western UAV group advances along the river's surface, dark as black glass, 20 meters, 30 meters, 40 meters. At this altitude, every industrial structure becomes a radar mirror, scattering scanning waves everywhere and concealing the tiny signatures of the UAVs. When a suburban Panzer S-1 battery fires the 5.7 E-6 missiles, both lose lock in the final seconds as the UAVs disappear behind factory buildings, smoke stacks, and roofs glowing under the Capitol's lights. Those missiles simply hurtle into the night, exploding far from their targets like unattended fireworks. The Panzer duty officer reports loss of target track, but even he isn't sure what he just saw. Each time the radar tries to reacquire the UAV swarm, the urban clutter covers them again as if someone is constantly drawing an invisible curtain in front of the Russian defense system's eyes. All 325, the southern group enters the most imperceptible corridor. The signal dead zone between two medium-range radar stations only a few km wide, but for small silent UAVs with low radar cross-sections, it is the perfect crack as they penetrate deeper into the city. The layered high-rises like a concrete forest create radar shadows, pockets of space where scanning waves are bent or absorbed with nothing reflecting back. And in those very voids, the southern UAV group glides for 10 kilometers without leaving a single trace on Russian screens. Abnormal reports begin flooding in. Clear signals in the north that vanished. Unusual jamming in the west. Nothing in the south, but still unsettling. No officer has enough data to confirm where the real strike is. All are trying to piece together a picture, with 2/3 of the pieces obscured by the city's lights. Odal 3-6. Moscow has to make a decision amid ambiguity, and ambiguity is always the enemy of air defense. The order rings out. Prioritize protection of the city center. A command that sounds logical in every defense manual. But tonight it is a self-inflicted stranglehold, as air defense units shift formations toward the Kremlin and key political areas. The corridor leading to the military airfields, the true targets, is left almost completely unguarded. No one imagines the attacker would dare bring UAVs deep into the capital. No one believes Moscow's air defense wall could be bypassed with just a few dozen UAVs slower than motorcycles. 328 main UAVs cross Moscow's outer air defense ring. No sirens, no intercept missiles, no timely reaction at all. They simply vanish from the first defensive layer and reappear in the airspace over the city like silent black shadows advancing toward their objectives. The remaining distance to the military airfields is only 18 kilometers 0330. Just as the outer air defense layer is breached, the ground-hogging radars at the airfield light up with the first signals. Only 5 targets appear clearly within the scan range at altitudes of 5,000 to 120 meters, too low for any missile attack scenario, and too steady to be manned aircraft. The strangest part lies in the speeds. The first target races as if competing against time. The second is noticeably slower. The third wobbles slightly, then accelerates, while the remaining to move in orbits that the airfield's task system cannot match to any program pattern. The system's conclusion is straightforward. High probability of large birds or civilian helicopters. This fatal misunderstanding delays another the precious minutes that the airfield will never regain. 331. The real alarm sounds when a duty officer suddenly realizes the targets are heading straight for the military parking apron. Immediately, a Panzer S-1 battery is pulled from its shelter onto the taxiway. The vehicle roaring, its steel hull shuddering lightly as it bounces over concrete ridges. The crew leaps into position, but everything unfolds in haste. Stabilizers not yet deployed, guidance system not calibrated, even the radar not fully warmed up. Still, they have no other choice. 0332. The Panzer fires its first missile. But with the vehicle unsteady, the round leaves the launcher at a slight off angle and loses lock after just 3 seconds, streaking into the empty sky east of the airfield. The second, launched in equal urgency, locks onto a factory smokestack on the airfield perimeter. Its stronger radar reflection fooling the system into thinking it is the primary target. The last to seem more accurate. They tail the UAVs, but only in the initial seconds. As the UAVs dip close to the ground, weaving into the clutter of industrial warehouses and metal fencing, both missiles lose lock almost simultaneously, then self-destruct per safety protocols. The Pantsir switches to its 30mm cannons, twin barrels spinning fast, recoiling hard, spewing a dense wall of rounds toward the faint UAV signals. But the airfield's apron lies within a chaotic urban maze. Concrete walls, warehouses, floodlights, antennas, fuel trucks. Each time the Pantsir tries to reacquire, the UAVs zigzag at tight angles. The gun's fire control radar cannot process quickly enough. The 30mm tracers streak in long arcs, slashing corrugated roofs, light poles, then fading into darkness, hitting none of the UAVs. The UAV group begins executing its pre-calculated tactic, crossing paths at 3 different points. One glides from left to right, another dives from right to left, a third cuts diagonally downward. The airfield radar, designed to track large aircraft, immediately lags 1 to 2 seconds each time the signals intersect. That brief delay is enough for the algorithms to confuse identities. Target A becomes B. B turns into C, and C vanishes into clutter. No one in the control room can say exactly how many UAVs are aiming for the airfield. That is the moment Moscow realizes this is no longer a minor incursion. An urgent report is sent to Airfield Command. Targets heading directly for military aircraft parking apron. A heavy silence blankets the room. Out there, a host of strategic Russian Air Force assets lie exposed under the airfield lights. For early warning aircraft with back-mounted radars like the giant eyes of long-range aviation. 3 electronic reconnaissance planes. The ears and eyes of the battlefield. 5 transport helicopters for personnel and equipment. 8 large transport aircraft including the 76s. Each one a logistical lifeline. None have been towed into hangars. None have time to start engines. None stand a chance of getting airborne. U-335. The distance between the UAVs and the apron is down to 4.5 kilometers. The Pantsir, the final defensive line, is now just a steel hulk panting in the glow of its own muzzle flashes. All missiles expended. The 30mm cannons overheated with red warnings blazing on the control screen. The Pantsir's radar is degraded by thick smoke drifting from an adjacent factory, turning the entire airspace ahead into an unreadable white haze. The airfield is now virtually naked. No shield remains. 0336. The 8 main UAVs accelerate while the 12 smaller UAVs disperse across the pre-programmed target grid. The 8 larger UAVs lock onto the 8 most valuable aircraft. 2 Il-76s for early warning aircraft with disc-shaped radars and 2 electronic reconnaissance planes. The 12 small UAVs dive toward the ground like a layered swarm of bees. 4 aim for the auxiliary fuel depot. 3 target the fuel trucks to head for the ammunition storage area, and the remaining 3 fly toward the tightly parked helicopter apron. No radio communication. No new commands. Everything executes exactly along trajectories calculated weeks in advance. Just seconds after crossing the 4.5 kilometers mark, the first strikes occur. UAV number 1 dives at a 35 angle, slamming directly into the belly of the first Il-76. A white flash erupts, then turns into a column of fire nearly 40 meters high, sweeping across the entire row of warehouses behind. Fuel inside the aircraft ignites instantly, causing the Il-76 to explode into a massive fireball. UAV number 2 crashes into the disc. Radar on the back of an early warning aircraft. The explosion is smaller but perfectly precise. The radar structure is torn apart like paper, cables burning in bright streaks. The aircraft tilting to one side like a bird shot in the wing. UAVs number 3 and 4 reach the helicopter apron. They approach at just 20-30 meters altitude, then simultaneously slam into 2 MEP-8s parked side by side. The 12.7mm ammunition bay in one helicopter cooks off almost immediately. Rounds detonating one by one and piercing through the adjacent helicopter, causing the second to explode as well. Fire spreads to the third in seconds, creating a chain of rapid blasts, echoing across the apron like rolling thunder. Fuel from the struck Il-76 spills across the runway, forming a river of flaming liquid racing like a red serpent. 2 mini UAVs crash directly into the auxiliary fuel depot, causing pressurized tanks to burst. 3 others slam into the fuel trucks, turning the entire area into a sea of fire. The remaining UAVs strike the ammunition storage, triggering continuous explosions in smaller containers, curling metal fragments in every direction like rain. The apron with 20 aircraft strategic assets of the entire base now becomes a self-detonating inferno, where each explosion triggers the next. 338. The desperate Pantsir crew tries to lock targets through the smoke, but the radar is jammed by thousands of hot spots from explosions and burning debris. Each time they acquire an object, The signal vanishes seconds later into the black and orange haze. The Pantsir switches to its 30mm cannons, but bursts only sweep through smoke and flame, hitting corrugated roofs and light poles without touching any UAVs. At the same time, one MEDL helicopter attempts to spool up its rotors to escape the blaze. But the rotors ingest scorching hot air from a prior explosion, causing engine power to collapse. The helicopter lurches violently, crashes back to the ground, and erupts in flames the moment the rotors touch concrete. Most targets have already been hit. Aircraft not yet exploded smolder steadily. Those that have are reduced to black and metal skeletons. The last two main UAVs loop back at low altitude to record footage via infrared cameras, gliding across the airfield like indifferent shadows. They fly slowly as if making a final confirmation that no target remains intact. The massive fires reflect red light onto their undersides, turning the ground below into a formless sea of flame. 0340. The entire apron of 20 aircraft is now just half-burned metal. Hulks leaning precariously on glowing red concrete creaking from the heat. The Moscow night is no longer dark. It is illuminated by the complete and utter failure of the airfield's air defenses. As swift as it was absolute, as if the entire system had never existed. 0341. Black smoke still billows from the apron like the final breath of an airfield just strangled. In the mere 90 seconds of the battle's end, 20 aircraft from Il-76's early warning planes, electronic reconnaissance aircraft to transport. Helicopters are completely destroyed. Not one managed to move. No air defense system intervened in time. The capital's air defense network, considered Russia's densest shield, has been pierced by cheap, small UAVs slower than civilian helicopters. The attack did not just burn aircraft, it exposed every weakness Moscow always believed did not exist. Russian radars, which used speed filters to reduce false alarms, discarded the very real targets. The dense urban backdrop with thousands of mixed reflectors overloaded every target classification algorithm. Panzer batteries deployed late in unstable positions, leading to missiles launched at wrong angles and guns unable to keep up with the UAV's zigzag paths. And most crucially, the airfield housing strategic assets had no hardened shelters, leaving all aircraft exposed under the lights. A perfect combination of errors, overconfidence, and technical vulnerabilities paved the way for the UAV swarm to penetrate the heart of the capital. The consequences are immediate. That very night, the strategic balance around Moscow shifts dramatically. No entry zone remains around the capital, what was once seen as the foundation of national security. With 20 key airframes wiped out, the Russian Air Force instantly loses transport, resupply, and operational mobility capacity in the central region for weeks, possibly longer. No quick replacements, no safe logistical air routes. Every operation must be adjusted or delayed. Fires still rage on the concrete, reflecting into the sky like a glowing reminder Moscow's invulnerability existed only in perception. And a night that seemed ordinary has become the boundary, marking the start of an era where cheap UAVs can tear apart places once considered invincible. If you found this story engaging, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next parts. Thank you for watching. See you in the next journey.